Alright, in this video we're going to learn how to use Pro Tools to record audio and to complete exercise 1. First thing I'm going to do is create a folder where I can keep everything that has to do with this project. So I'm going to right click the screen, select new folder, click on there, and I'm going to type in what I want to name this folder. In this case I'm going to name it my last name and EX1 for exercise 1. Oh boy. So I'm going to keep that aside for now. Next thing I'm going to do is open Pro Tools. What you see here is the dashboard, and for you it might have opened up to another one of these side tabs here, maybe getting started. But what we want to use now is the Create tab. Now this tab allows us to select the initial settings and select a name for our Pro Tools session. So in this case I'm going to name the session something similar to the folder, my last name, EX1, and then I'm just going to go down here and just double check that I have this kind of sample rate that I need for my project and the bit depth for my project, and in this case those settings are fine. I'm also going to make sure that interleaved is checked because that has to do with the stereo output in the end. Now, very important, I'm going to click on this location button and select where I want this Pro Tools session to be saved. So I click on that, and then I want it to actually be saved to that folder that I just made that I put on the desktop. So I'm going to click on the desktop. Here it is, and I'm going to hit open. Notice that the path here that it says is, desktop natter ex1, which is this folder over here that I created earlier. And then that sounds good, looks good. I'm going to hit create. Okay, Pro Tools opens. So the next thing we have to do is make sure that Pro Tools is recognizing and working with our audio interface. To do that, we go to the Setup menu and we scroll down to Playback Engine and click that. Now in this window, in this dialog box, we choose the audio interface from this menu right here. In this case, I'm actually going to use this Studio 1810C because that's what I have here. Okay. The other thing that's important to note is this thing called the buffer size. You want it to be as low as your computer can handle when you're recording and higher when you're processing and mixing. In this case, it doesn't matter, but if you were to be importing a video, you would have to enable this. All right, so I'm not going to worry about these other settings here. I'm just going to hit OK. The next thing we're going to have to do is actually create a track to record onto. So to do that, we go to the track menu and we click New, and we get this dialog box that asks us what we want to create here. So we're going to create one mono track, and it's going to be mono in this case because I'm just recording onto with one microphone onto one channel. So I want it to be mono, and it's an audio track as opposed to some other options we have. And we'll leave this alone because audio tracks record in samples as opposed to ticks. And here I could name it. If this was going to be a voiceover, I could say voiceover. If it's going to be vocal for singing, I might say vocal. If it's a guitar, I might say guitar. I'm just going to leave it audio right now. I'll show you how to name it outside of this dialog box. This is good. I'm just going to hit create. Okay, so what happened was it created a track, and it just I left that default name in that other dialog box. But if I want to change it, I could right click it here and say rename, and I could type in vocal, or actually I'm going to call it voice. Alternatively, I could just double click in that spot there and change it to what I want. So Pro Tools sets up two windows for you to work in, and one is called the edit window and the other one is called the mix window. Now there's a couple ways to get back and forth between the two. You could go to the window menu and just say, okay, mix. There's the mix window. Here's the edit window. I mean, they're both kind of visible right now, but that selection puts one on top of the other. So I suppose if this one was expanded so I couldn't even see the mix window behind it, changing this would make the other one come forward. Okay, so I'm also going to make this a little bigger so we can tell it's a window here. How about that? All right, so here's my mix window. Alternatively, another way to get back and forth is on a Mac, Command equals, and it just pops one on top of the other. When you just toggle between, when you hold down Command and press equals, they'll just flip-flop. Okay, so in this case, I actually want the mix window to be the one that's on top, because our next maneuver here is to go down our track and set the inputs and outputs, the I/O settings. Okay, so we already made sure that Pro Tools is talking with or working with our audio interface. So now we have to select the audio input path from this box right here. Now, exactly what this looks like depends on what this list looks like depends on the audio interface that you're using. In this case, I know I'm plugging a microphone into line 1, so I'm just going to select that. Okay, so now it's getting this track is ready to receive signal from line 1 on my audio interface. So that's like jack number 1 I plugged my microphone into. This, by the way, is the audio output path, and I could change it to different things that my audio interface makes available. In this case, this is just the regular stereo output. That's great. That'll go to my headphones. That'll go to speakers. All right, so I'm back with you. We're going to move on, and we're going to record some audio into Pro Tools. We're going to start with a voiceover. And to get audio into this track that we created, we have to do a couple things. One is we have to enable the single track, the actual track that's recorded. And another thing we have to do is we have to record, enable, or arm the whole Pro Tools session to record. All right, so first, to record, enable the track, we have to just click this little red button. And as soon as we do that, we start to see the level of the signal going into that track. All right, then we want to make sure we adjust the level to where we want it. Now, it's actually hitting not too bad. Our goal is about -12. Now, this is 0, and all these numbers below are negative numbers. So we want the signal to hit just somewhere around here. So maybe that's that's not too bad. The first place to go to get the signal level right is to adjust the gain knob on the audio interface. So I have a microphone plugged into channel 1 on my audio interface, and I'm going to adjust the gain for channel 1. That's not too bad. That little green line is sort of the peak. All right, that's looking good. That's ready to go. Now, the track is enabled, record enabled, but we also have to get the whole session record enabled. So to get there, I'm just gonna hit this Command equals to have my edit window be the one that's visible. And over here, this area here is called the transport. This area up here in the toolbar. Now you might notice a red button that looks like a record button, a green button here looks like a play button, a little square button that looks like a stop button, and that's what they are. Now, if I were to hit the red button, the whole Pro Tools session is record enabled. Now, over here, this is another way to see the track we created. This is what it looks like in the edit window. You could see that the track itself is record enabled. I can hit it. Now the track is not, the whole session is ready to record, but the track itself is not. And now the track is ready to record and the whole session. All right, so they'll both need to be recorded ready, okay? Now to actually record, you hit the play button, okay? So this is flashing, hit the play button, that will actually make Pro Tools record onto any track that is ready to receive. All right, I'm just going to hit that green play button, and it's going to start recording. Here we go. In Audio Production 1, students will learn the basic techniques and technologies used in creative audio production, both for media and music. Emphasis is on design and practical production skills used in recording audio, mixing, processing, and editing sound. Students will create different types of projects focusing on the fundamentals of audio for various applications. Students may choose to specialize in audio for media, or music, or both. All right, I'm back with you again. We previously made a decent recording that we can now use as an example to learn how to edit audio in Pro Tools. So the first thing I'm going to do actually here is I'm going to disarm recording both for the session by clicking on this flashing red button, and also on the individual track by clicking this flashing red button. Okay, so now it's not record enabled. The next thing I'm going to do, and this is not necessary, but I like to, I'm going to go to the Pro Tools menu. I'm going to go to Settings, and I'm just going to give a little coloring, a little default coloring to individual tracks in my session, just because I like to see a little color. It helps me organize what I'm doing. So under the Display tab, there is a section that says Default Track Color Coding, and I'm going to change it from groups to track type, and basically that just will give a default color to tracks of a certain type. Now right now we're working with audio tracks, so it will just kind of color code all audio tracks with a certain color. So I'm going to hit OK, and we'll see what it does. It makes it blue. Okay, very good. Now you could see here that this is a visual representation of what we recorded, and it's a representation in waveforms. A couple other things that are important that you may like to do to make your life easier when you're editing is you could grab the bottom of the track and drag down, give yourself a little more space to see things. These over here do the same thing, this plus and the minus. You can zoom out and zoom in with the plus and the minus in the corner here. Zoom out, zoom in vertically. Also, you can zoom out and zoom in horizontally with the plus and the minus here. Okay, that might be helpful to you. Make this a little bigger vertically. You may notice that there's some stuff here. I purposely recorded some paper rustling. And also, you might notice right here, this gets pretty soft. So let's just listen to that really quickly. Students will create different types of projects focusing on the fundamentals of audio for various applications. Students may choose to specialize in audio for media, or music, or both. So I kind of backed away from the microphone, and I did that on purpose so I could show you how to increase the amplitude or increase the volume of something that you record. All right, so let's get to work on doing these things. To do these things, we have to learn how to use the tools up here in the toolbar. These three tools, this, and even that, this little box above it, those four tools actually are the edit tools. So this one is the grabber tool, looks like a hand. This one is the selection tool, looks like a selection. And this one is the trim tool. It kind of looks like a staple or something with arrows. So they all have different functions. And further, actually, when you click on this box above, let me just zoom in. When you click on this little box above, it allows you to select all three at once and use all three of them at the same time, depending on where you place your cursor on your clip. All right, so I'm going to zoom out here. All right, so we'll start with the trim tool. The trim tool allows you to do what it sounds like, to trim the length of your clip. So this thing is called a clip. So if I want to get rid of this beginning and where I have this paper rustling, I could do a couple things. I could just bring this cursor to the edge and I could start to see this looks like a paper clip kind of thing. I could click and then just drag and it trims it down. Okay, that's one way to do it. I could also do the same thing over here. Go to the edge, trim the edge off. Okay, so now I have a clip that is shorter. I'm going to hit Command Undo, because another thing you could do with the trim tool is you could just click somewhere within and it will trim up to that point. So if I click right here, it's going to trim all this stuff off before it. And it did. And if my staple picture is going another direction, there we go. I could click anywhere here and it will trim everything after it. Okay, so that's kind of two ways to do the same thing. Now if I click on this grabber tool, I could select this clip and it will move. I'm just grabbing it and I can just drag it anywhere I need to. Okay, so I'm going to just drag it to the beginning. All right. Now selection tool allows me to click somewhere and drag to make a selection. All right, I could select anything. I select a little tiny bit. I could select a lot more. In this case, I want to select this area where it got soft, and I want to show you a couple things we could do to make this volume meet the volume or the amplitude of the other waveforms or the other recording nearby. So first, though, I'm going to use this plus sign down here to zoom in a little bit. All right, that's a little better. All right, so this is, I'm going to take a listen to this. I'm maybe about right here. I'm going to want to increase the amplitude. Let's see. Students will create different types of projects focused maybe about right here. All right, so I'm going to use my selection tool and I'm going to grab just right before that, and then I'm going to go right up to here. What I can do now is go over to my edit menu and go down to separate clip at selection. So I made a selection. Now I'm going to separate this clip at the selection I made. And essentially what it just did was turned this into its own clip. I'm going to go back to my hand grabber tool. I'm going to zoom out with this minus sign. And now that one clip is now become 3 things. Actually, and you could see that over here, this is the clips list. So as I edit things, this gets populated with all the individual clips that I'm working with, I'm creating, I'm adding. So here's the original thing that was in there, but here's the piece I made, one of the pieces I made when I did that separation. And here's the middle piece, and here's the other piece. So it's good to know that's what's going on in the clip list. Now, what's interesting here is that each of these smaller clips that I created have a little level knob, a level fader of their own in the corner, in the left bottom corner. And I could adjust the amplitude. I can adjust the volume of just a single clip. Okay? So it's pretty easy. You just click on that little icon. Let me just zoom in. You click on that, and you could just raise it up until it looks a little better. Right? I don't want to go too crazy here. So now it's plus 6 dB, whereas the other ones are unchanged. And it should, match the volume a little better now. Now, it might also, I'm going to go back to my selection tool, so I can just click somewhere in here. It might also increase the noise in the background. That's something to watch out for. So you want to try to minimize your room noise, your background noise, your noise floor. Students will create different types of projects focusing on the fundamentals of audio for various applications. Students may choose the special. It's not too bad. It did change a little bit. I'm going to just bring it down a dB or something, just to make that a couple dB. I'm going to make, just to make that increase of the background noise less apparent. Students will create different types of projects focusing on the fundamentals of audio for various applications. Students may choose the special. That's a little better. All right, so now that section competes with the rest of it. I got rid of the rustling paper. So there's another thing I'd like to talk about up here is the Smart tool. So you could select these tools individually and use them one at a time, or you can click on this beam, this box here, and it selects all three at once. And then depending on where your cursor is, you could use all three. So if I'm kind of higher up, I have my selection tool. If I'm sort of lower down, I have my hand grabbing tool. If I'm towards the edge, I have my trim tool. Let me just undo that. One other thing too is if I go to the top corner, I get a square box, and that's a fade tool. So let's say I want to just fade out the sound. You can see it creates a little fade out here. Let me zoom in so you can see better. So that line represents the volume decreasing. If I don't like a fade out I could actually just click that area and just hit delete, and the fade out goes away, and then I could try it again. All right, gonna zoom out. Maybe I'll go to the beginning. And I'll do a little fade in. Okay, so now I got a pretty good voiceover track. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to import pre-recorded audio into Pro Tools. And we're going to use this pre-recorded audio as some background music for the voiceover that we recorded live. So first thing, let's go get some pre-recorded audio. I'm going to take us to this website, freesound.org, which has like a library of all kinds of samples and loops and sound effects, and you can just search for just about anything, and you might find something that's helpful. You have to set up an account, but it's free. There's many websites like this out there. They're not all safe, so be careful. I happen to know this one's pretty good, so that's why I'm using it. So I'm going to search for hip-hop. You can see I already did it because I know this particular track that's going to work here. So this story one is the one I'm going for. In these little windows, you can hit the play button to preview the track, but I'm just going to click on it because I know what it is. I'm going to hit download. Okay, so that went to my downloads folder. All right, so let me drop down Pro Tools here for a second, and let me remind you about this folder we created in the beginning. I created this folder, and I said we're going to put everything with that is, goes along with this project in this folder, so it's all in one place. It's very good practice because then I could move the whole entire folder to another drive, or I could upload it to Dropbox or something and share it with somebody else if I needed to. So what I'm going to do now here is I'm going to go to my downloads folder, and I'm going to drag this in, and that's what I just downloaded. I'm going to change it, the name, because that looks bizarre, to music. Okay, and now notice there's two things in here now. I have this music wave file that I downloaded, plus this folder right here. Now this is the Pro Tools session folder that Pro Tools created when we opened Pro Tools. And inside here is some very important things. This is the Pro Tools session file. If we click this, it would open our project, or open our session. Also, the things that we record, Pro Tools stores in this audio files folder. When we mix things down to stereo left-right, when we're done, when we bounce files, it would get stored in here. There's nothing in there right now. If we happen to insert a video that we were editing along to, it would be stored here. So this is the Pro Tools session folder. Now we're actually going to have Pro Tools take this and bring it in to the audio file, but we're going to do that from within Pro Tools. Okay, so let me just close this for right now. Let's go back to Pro Tools. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the File menu. We're going to go down to Import Audio. Okay, so now it happened to just open up to the right spot, but if it wasn't there, you'd have to like search around your desktop. Here's the folder that's on my desktop. Okay, now here's that WAV file that we downloaded and I renamed. Now watch what happens when I click on it. It populates some information down here. It tells me it's a WAV file, it tells me its length, it tells me its size, it tells me its bit depth, it tells me its sample rate, and it tells me that it's 2 channels, which is left and right, as opposed to like 1 channel, which is mono. It also has a very important message over here. It says music.wav can be added directly to the current session, but it will play back at the wrong speed. Okay, why is that? Well, that's because the sample rate of the clip that I downloaded is 44,100 hertz, 44.1 kilohertz. And the sample rate of the whole project, if you recall, when we set it up, we set it to be 48 kilohertz. So if I were to just add this track without hitting this button that says convert, then it's going to actually play back at the wrong speed because the sample rate is different. So actually, instead of just clicking on this and hitting add, I want Pro Tools to do what it's suggesting I should do, convert it. So now it's going to actually convert it to this. So this is what it was. This is the source, and it's going to change the sample rate. The destination sample rate is going to be the same as my Pro Tools session. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to hit open. Okay. Now it's saying, hey, where do you want to save this? Well, I of course want to save this in my Pro Tools audio files folder, right? That's the folder I was just showing you that's within the Pro Tools session folder. So that's where it's defaulting to. That's good. That's what I want. Okay, now I get a dialog box in Pro Tools that says, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to drop this clip into the clips list, or at least drop a pointer to the clip? Or do you want to, at this moment, create a new track? I suppose I could do either, but at this moment, I want to create a new track. And there it is. And it named the track after what the file was named. So it was kind of good that I named it music, because that's kind of helpful. Okay, so right off the bat, I noticed that the clip is, much shorter than my voiceover. So that's okay. We can work with that anyway. And I'm going to expand this so it's about the same size as the other one, so kind of get a fair shake at understanding how things look. Notice this is mono. There's only one waveform, and in the music track there's a waveform on the top and the waveform on the bottom, and that's the left and right side of the recording, the left and right channels. Let's just take a quick listen. All right, I'm going to go back to the beginning, return to 0, hit play, or I can hit spacebar. In Audio Production 1, students will learn the basic techniques and technologies used in creative audio production, both for media and music. Emphasis is on design and practical production. And indeed, that music is very loud. So I'm going to do something similar to what I did to this clip over here. Is I'm going to just go to this little clip volume, and I'm going to just drag it down so it, at least visually here, it appears like it's not as loud as the voice. I want it to be under the voice. Okay, see how that works out. Let me go back to the beginning, hit play. In Audio Production 1, students will learn the basic techniques and technologies used in creative audio production, both for media and music. Emphasis is on design and practical production. Okay, that's not too bad. I know that I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Oops, that was zoom out. I'm going to zoom in. I know I want to trim the edge of this off a little bit because I could tell, just musically, emphasis is on design and practical production. That clip would need to start again right there. So I'm going to go up to my trim tool. Oops. And I'm going to just click off this edge here. Boom. All right, now, as I said before, this is not long enough. So I'm going to, make sure I got my hand grabber. I'm going to select the whole thing. I'm going to go to the edit menu. I'm going to go down to duplicate, which also, by the way, is Command D. And I'm going to do that. This one's selected, so I'm going to do that again. Duplicate or Command D. And now I have this. That's pretty good. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay. This is obviously too long. Remember, I'm in my Smart Tools, so I could, just get to my cursor to the right spot here and get my trim tool. Okay. I'm going to drag this back. And then I'm going to go up to the top edge, get that square. I'm going to just pull in a little fade, right? Just like we had before. Let me zoom in a little bit, right? Kind of to match the fade out with the vocals. All right. And now this should be good. So I have, oops, let me just zoom back in. Oy. I have the volume. You can see that the amplitude of the waveform of the drum beat looks a little bit under the voice. So this should be pretty good. Let's check it out. Go back to the beginning, hit play. In Audio Production 1, students will learn the basic techniques and technologies used in creative audio production, both for media and music. Emphasis is on design and practical production skills used in recording audio, mixing, processing, and editing sound. Students will create different types of projects focusing on the fundamentals of audio for various applications. Students may choose to specialize in audio for media, or music, or both. All right, not too bad. So the final thing that we would need to do if this was our complete voiceover, a complete commercial here, is we'd have to go to the File menu and go down to Bounce Mix, okay? But actually, hold on, there is one other thing. I'm going to go to my selection tool. I'm going to make sure the whole length of what I want to export, what I want to bounce, what I want to become an audio track to share, I want to make sure that is selected. All right. So, I mean, I don't have to select all the tracks. I just have to make sure the length is selected. And then I go to File, Bounce Mix, and I have a dialog box here that gives me some options. I could name it. I could say Natter X1. I could say Bounce, or I could say Mix maybe. And I could choose whether I want this to be an MP3, a WAV, right, or AIFF. Remember, WAV and AIFF are full quality, lossless, whereas an MP3 is a lossy format, but it's compressed, so the file's smaller. So something you can email. So it might be useful. Although I could choose exactly where I want it to go. I want to make sure it's going to my bounced folder in my Pro Tools session folder, okay? So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to this natter.x. Okay, now here's the Pro Tools session folder. And I want to make sure it goes to my bounced files folder. And I'm going to hit open, and it's going to bring me back to here. I'm going to hit bounce. And, because I chose MP3, I could type in what they call metadata, which I can put artist name and album and comment. If I choose WAV, I couldn't do that. And this is like, so if you open it in iTunes or something, it would read this information. Or if you were sharing it with, let's say, like a music supervisor for like a film or something or a TV show, they would want this information so they know how to contact you and things. All right. Great. So there we go. We bounced it. It's always good to hit save. Matter of fact, I didn't save enough. Normally I would save, every few minutes when I'm working on things. All right, Pro Tools is good. I'm going to close Pro Tools, quit Pro Tools. And I'm going to go into this folder here, and then I'm going to go into the Pro Tools folder and just see if that bounce file is there. Yep. And then I click on it. Probably it's going to open with Apple Music here. In Audio Production 1, students will learn the basic techniques and technologies used in creative audio production, both for media and music. Emphasis is on design and practical production skills used in recording audio, mixing, processing, and editing sound. Students will create different types of projects focusing on the fundamentals of audio for various applications. Students may choose to specialize in audio for media, or music, or both. All right, there it is. Now you know how to record and edit and bounce audio out of Pro Tools.